Good morning to all the participants. Today we are here for our national webinar on right to information in India, a boon or a chimera. This is a very difficult time when our entire regular activities are hampered. But today we are with the e-resources, we are trying to continue our learning. Why not the curricular activities? So that's why the Campus Law Center took this kind of the initiative to start this national webinar series. So today we are going to discuss on right to information in India, a boon or a chimera. To discuss on the subject today, we have two resource person on our panel. The first one is the keynote speaker is the Shailesh Gandhi. Shailesh Gandhi is a former Central Information Commissioner. He served the Central Information Commission from 2008 to 2013. And he's also active, RTI activist also. He is also authored various books on various articles is also written by him. The second resource person we have today is Sunny Sebastian. Sunny Sebastian is the former deputy editor in the Dainik Daily The Hindu, and the Sunny Sebastian sir is also the founding vice chancellor of Haridev Joshi Journalism University in Rajasthan. So I welcome all of you on behalf of the Campus Law Center. So sir, now it's over to Mr. Shailesh sir. So please enlighten us on your view on this topic. Over to you, sir.
Fellow citizens of India, we say we are the world's largest democracy. The classic definition of democracy is rule of the people, for the people, by the people. Most Indian citizens do not feel like they are rulers of this nation, and this is not accepted by the power structure. Then how are we a democracy? We say we are a democracy because we have a reasonably fair system of elections. We are able to change governments, change our elected representatives, and run the government. I would submit to you that having elections and a constitution are necessary conditions for a democracy, but are not the complete set of conditions. The heart and essence of democracy lies in the concept that each individual citizen is a sovereign in her own right, and she gives a part of the sovereignty to the state, in return for which she gets the rule of law. Sovereignty of the individual is the basis of democracy, is the base of all human rights. Each human being is a sovereign and has to be respected and recognized as the sovereign. In Hindi, we use the word Lokshahi. Lokshahi can only have one meaning, logon ki shahenshahi. A citizen, when he or she goes to a government office or is dealt with a government office, should feel like he or she is equal to the public servant. Normally, the truth is that when a public citizen goes to a public office and is coming out, he or she feels angry, humiliated, and frustrated. That is the real truth. And to my mind, the purpose of right to information, apart from getting information, which is of course the mechanical thing, is recognition of the individual citizen as the sovereign of this nation. Empowering the individual citizen is the main focus of the right to information, and that is why it's a very important piece of legislation. In my opinion, the right to information came to India and flowed to the citizens of India the day the Constitution of India was made, because Article 19(1)(a) came into existence. And there have been numerous Supreme Court judgments, starting with Justice Matthew, which recognize that Article 19(1)(a) includes three, amongst other rights also: right to speech, right to publish, and right to information. And I would submit, and I would along the course establish that all these three are equivalent and must be looked at as equivalents. This title that we have given today, is right to information a bane or a chimera? Ask yourself, would you think of giving this title to freedom to speak or freedom to publish? Because In the constitution, they are placed at equal by a series of Supreme Court judgments. The first transparency law came in Sweden on 2nd December 1776. After that, for nearly 150 years, most countries did not adopt such a law. Since 1990, in 1996, there were about 16 or 17 countries. Since then, now about 120 countries have such transparency laws. They are known by 3 different names: Freedom of Information, FOI, Access to Information, ATI, and Right to Information, RTI. All these are synonymous terms for the same concept, which recognizes that the citizen has the right to information, held by the government or held by entities with whom the government has put a lot of money. If we recognize the concept that the citizens are the rulers of the nation, the government is owned by the citizen. The citizen individually owns the government. He is the ruler of this nation. Therefore, everything that the government holds, all cupboards, all tanks, all guns, all cars, planes, whatever you have, land, buildings, is owned by each individual citizen. Now, he can't take away that property because it's held in partnership with 130 crore other Indians. But the information in the records, in the files, in the computers of this government offices also belongs to every citizen. He owns the information, and therefore getting information is his fundamental right. The default mode is information belongs to citizens. Unless you want to change the definition of democracy and say, no, citizens are not rulers of a democracy, this is the given position. Now the law came into being the national law. The first state law in India came in 1997 in Tamil Nadu. It was a useless law, but technically that's the first law that came in the state of Tamil Nadu. The first movement of RTI started in rural Rajasthan in a village called Devdungri, led by some 3 unique people. Aruna Roy, a former IAS officer who gave up her position, who resigned from the IAS and went there. Nikhil Day, a young lawyer trained in America, and Shankar Singh, a person who was an inhabitant of Devdungri. They all stayed in a hut and started explaining the concept of democracy to citizens. And they started demanding information, and they realized that this was really necessary for their survival. So the first movement started there. The first Supreme Court judgment recognizing the RTI as a very important right is by Justice Mathew, who incidentally said, except in matters relating to national security, most information citizens should get. Now let's come to the law which was framed by Parliament and passed in May 2005 and came into effect from 12th October 2005. It starts with defining information. What is information? In simple terms, if I may put it, information is what exists. A lot of people mix up right to information with right to interrogation. This is not right to interrogation. Information is what exists. So if there is a record about something, then that record has to be given to you. But for example, if a citizen, quite often, if I apply for a license, will it be given to me? Now, there will be nothing on paper or on record to show whether the license would be given to you or not, and therefore that is not information. If you ask a public information officer the meaning of a law or how will the law be interpreted, that is not information unless it exists on the records. Information can exist on paper files, on computers, on CDs, on DVDs. All of this is defined as information, and who has the right to information? All citizens of India have the right to information because they own the government. What is right to information? It includes getting notes, photocopies from records, getting DVDs of CCTV footage, computer disks, CDs, and so on and so forth. All that is in right to information. You can also go and inspect files or work. The citizen also has a right to take samples of material. if somebody thinks that the medicines in a government hospital are of poor quality or of expired dates, you can get samples from there and get retested somewhere. Section 4 demonstrates what the hope of RTI is, or what is the fundamental of RTI. It expects the government to display all its information suo motu to the citizens of India. Some people ask, can confidential information be given? Can sensitive information be given? The Act does not recognize anything like confidential or sensitive information, but only has a list of 10 exemptions in Section 8(1), which we'll deal with shortly. And Section 9 is the only other exclusion. Section 9 covers copyright. Anything that is copyrighted, you cannot demand and it would not be given because that would infringe somebody's copyright. Does any reason or locus standi required for asking for information? The answer is no. The Act categorically states that no reasons need to be given for seeking information. And the reasoning is very simple. If you own the information, you are the owner of the information. Only things defined by law that you cannot be given can be refused. All the other things, default mode is information has to be provided. Within 30 days, this information has to be given to you when you file an RT application. Who do I file an RT application with? Do you need a form? The answer is you don't need any form. Any plain piece of paper is your form. Some states have given in their rules formats for asking for information. You follow that format. You can do it on a computer, you can do it handwritten, you can do it on a typewriter. The law is standard for the whole nation, but competent authorities, which is all states, central government, all high courts, have been given, and some other bodies, the Speaker of the Lok Sabha as well as the assemblies, have been recognized as competent authorities who can frame their own rules. And the rules can only cover amount of fee to be paid, format to be followed, and so on. The rules cannot go beyond the RTI Act, as everyone knows. Now let's come to, if in 30 days the PIO does not respond, it is a deemed refusal without any reason. And really speaking, the PIO is open to having penalty proceedings against him if he does not respond without giving any reason. He has to give reasons, and the reasons can only be in Section 8 and 9 of the RTI Act. Apart from which, there is nothing else. Either information is not on record, there's nothing in record and you are not seeking information, then the PIO's answer should be there is nothing on record. The only other exception is some agencies, very few limited intelligence and security agencies, have been classified under Section 24, and that list of agencies may not give information unless it's a matter of corruption or human rights. Apart from that, all the other information by default has to be given to citizens. Now, I would like to read out the exemptions of Section 8(1) because this is the only thing basically apart from copyright based on which information can be denied to a citizen. Notwithstanding anything contained in this Act, there shall be no obligation to give any citizen information, disclosure of which would prejudicially affect the sovereignty and integrity of India, the security, strategic, scientific, or economic interests of the state, relation with foreign state, or lead to incitement of an offense. And the law requires that the PIO has to give in writing how this exemption applies. He cannot merely say Section 8(1)A, 8(1)B, etc. Incidentally, before I get into this, all public authorities have to give information. What's a public authority? Everything that we call government is a public authority. Anything created by a notification issued by government. For example, all deemed universities come into existence because a specific notification is issued for the deemed university. And therefore, they are public authorities and have to give information. And all offices of all public authorities have to appoint a public information officer. The law says that a citizen can send an application to any office of a public authority, and there has to be a PIO. You need not worry about the name of the PIO. And this PIO will take the help of other officers, or if the information is not with him but is with another public authority, he will transfer the RT application within 5 days. Therefore, 5 days plus 30 days, within 35 days, the information must be given to you. There are some fees that are specified in the rules, which are application fees or fees for supplying the information. Typically, it's ₹2 per page of cost. Now, section 8(1)(b, information which has been expressly forbidden to be published by any court of law or tribunal, or the disclosure of which may constitute contempt of court. I want to carefully point out that matters that are sub judice cannot deny information saying that these matters are sub judice. Parliament knew the word sub judice. Parliament specifically said, which has been expressly forbidden to be published by any court of law or tribunal, or the disclosure of which may constitute contempt of court. By definition, for example, if a court has expressly said this information shall not be given, it will not be given. Alternately, if a court proceedings are in camera, then automatically this applies. But a lot of rejection of information is done on the claim that this is sub judice, that is not as per the law, and is going into an area which is denying information or fundamental right to a citizen without any legal basis. C, information the disclosure of which would cause a breach of privilege of Parliament or the state legislature. What kind of information is this? For example, a commissioner of inquiry report is supposed to be presented to Parliament or state legislature within 6 months. During that period, if you ask for it and it has not been placed, then 8(1)(c) would apply. However, I would like to narrate an interesting incident which happened with me also. The Adarsh Commission Gotala, which is known, very well known in Mumbai and Maharashtra definitely, was a big scam. Because there was a lot of hullabaloo, a commission of inquiry was appointed. The Commissions of Inquiry Act requires commissions of inquiry to submit their reports in 6 months, but usually they take extensions. Within 2 years, the Adarsh Commission report was given. Because it named some ministers and senior officials, the report was not placed on the floor of the legislature. I asked after 7 months for a copy of that report. The PIO claimed this is exempt under section 8(1)(c) since it has not been placed before legislature, therefore it would breach of privilege of the legislature. I argued that the Commission of Inquiry Act requires the report to be placed in the assembly within 6 months. Since you've not placed it, you've already violated the privilege of legislature, and therefore you cannot claim this privilege any longer. This report was given. Therefore, all commissions of inquiry reports can be accessed by any citizen after the period of 6 months is over. D, information including commercial confidence, trade secrets, or intellectual property, the disclosure of which would harm the competitive position of a third party. There's a public interest override, but we'll come to that later. This has to satisfy 2 conditions. First, it must be in the nature of commercial confidence or intellectual property, and it should be shown that as disclosure will harm somebody's competitive interest. To give an example, Bank of India or State Bank of India can claim this for information relating to it. Air India can claim this, but Indian Railways cannot because Indian Railways has no competition. Similarly, before a tender is issued, this clause can be claimed to stop giving information about somebody who's bidding. But once the tender is issued and awarded, there can be no reason because it cannot be claimed that somebody's competitive interest would be hurt. Information will E. 8(1)(e) is a very common exemption which is used. Information available to a person in his fiduciary relationship. A lot of government officers quite often interpret fiduciary as saying because लोगों को trust है सरकार पे इसके लिए information दिया, which is wrong. Fiduciary includes a lot of factors. A, somebody gives information to somebody with superior knowledge for his or her own benefit. I give information to my lawyer, my doctor, my banker for my benefit. And he's supposed to use that information only for my benefit, not for anything else. He cannot go and publicize it, But whatever information the fiduciary gives me, I'm free to share with anybody else. There is no legal requirement requiring me to submit any information to a fiduciary, and I can lie before a fiduciary, and there is no law that prevents that. Incidentally, in 10 cases of the RBI had claimed fiduciary relationship with respect to the reports given to them by banks. This was not upheld by me and was supported by the Supreme Court in December 2015, that the definition of fiduciary I am giving you has been accepted by the Supreme Court. Information received in information received in confidence from foreign government. This is the only place the word confidence or confidentiality is used. Therefore, if anybody says this is confidential information shall not be given, that is not as per the law. Only if information is given by a foreign government and the PIO says this is given in confidence, there is no further argument, one has to accept that. H, information which would impede the process of investigation or apprehension or prosecution of offenders. Very often, Section 81H is quoted to deny information, saying that investigation is going on, hence information shall not be given. This is not as per the law. Clearly, the law says which would impede the process of investigation. Therefore, somebody would have to demonstrate how giving the information would impede the process of investigation. In 70% of the cases where people are asking for progress of investigation, it is the complainant who is seeking information. And the PIO routinely says, will impede the process of investigation. It is laughable to say that somebody who has complained about a matter is likely to impede the process of investigation. Generally, 70% of these cases are like this, and information would have to be provided by law. 81I, cabinet papers, including records of deliberations of the councils of ministers, secretaries, and other officers, provided that the decisions of councils of ministers, the reasons thereof, and the material on the basis of which the decisions are taken shall be made public after the decision has been taken and the matter is complete or over. This is a unique exemption. Up to a point, it says information is exempt until a decision is taken. After the decision is taken by the cabinet, that information must be suo motu put into public domain by the cabinet. This is a unique exemption. For example, if a bill is discussed in the cabinet, a notice put up by cabinet and people discuss this, etc., all these deliberations are exempt until the decision is taken. Let's assume the cabinet decides to put the bill in parliament and presents it to parliament. Once it presents it to parliament, it's the ownership of the parliament, and the cabinet, the purpose of the cabinet note is over, and therefore it must be put in public domain suo motu. Ideally, reasons for all bills must be made publicly available within 7 days or 10 days or 15 days of the bill being presented in parliament. That is the only way in which citizens will get an idea about what parliament is doing and be able to give their views and contribute to the law. 81J is the most popular RTI exemption. About 50% of RTI rejections are done on the basis of 81A. What does it say? Information which relates to personal information, the disclosure of which has no relationship to any public activity or interest, or which would cause unwarranted invasion of the privacy of the individual. Unless the, okay, and there is a proviso to this. Provided that the information which cannot be denied to the parliament or a state legislature shall not be denied to any person. This is unique. This proviso has been given only for this. Let's take a look. If it is personal information, it may fall under 81J. Your name is personal, your age is personal, the color of your hair is personal. A letter you write, who wrote that letter? Written by a natural person. Anything relating to a natural person is personal. The disclosure of which has no relationship to any public activity or interest. Most information in government offices is a public record, and it comes there because it's a public activity. Somebody argued that does it mean what I eat at home will go on the records? The answer is no. RTI is to do only with what is on record and what is of public activity. Suppose, why is this word there? This term is there because supposing a raid was carried out or a phone tapping was done, these are extraordinary situations. The activity in a phone or a private phone is not a public activity, and therefore if such a record is sought, it should be denied, or which would cause unwarranted invasion of the privacy of an individual. Unwarranted and warranted. And privacy. What is privacy? This has become a big discussion point. Especially in the last 2-3 years since the Puttaswamy judgment came, a lot of rejections are occurring saying this is an issue of privacy. Supreme Court has recognized that privacy is a fundamental right of citizens. A 9-judge bench sat and turned out a judgment of 547 pages, which gives various theories, philosophies, arguments, but does not say what is privacy. What would constitute privacy? The Supreme Court judgment, in fact, says it will develop on a case-to-case basis. How is an average PIO to decide whether this is an intrusion on privacy or not? I would submit that legal certainty is an important factor of all legal formats. This legal certainty should have been provided. I'll later on discuss how it was provided by earlier Supreme Court judgments, but has not been provided in this. But because we recognize that such discussions may take place, such confusion may take place, a proviso was given, provided that the information which cannot be denied to Parliament or a state legislature shall not be denied to any person. What is the meaning of this proviso? It can only have one meaning in my view, that whoever is denying information, public information officer, first appellate authority, information commission, or court, must make a statement that I believe this information would not be given to Parliament, or I would not agree to give this information to Parliament. If that statement is made, then only can Section 81J exemption be applied, but it's being applied left, right, and center without proper application of mind or of the law. Section 8.2 says, notwithstanding anything in the Official Secrets Act, nor any of the exemptions permissible in accordance with subsection 1, a public authority may allow access to information if public interest in disclosure outweighs the harm to the protected interest. The law does not require any public interest to be established unless an exemption applies. If an exemption applies, then one has to demonstrate that there is a larger public interest in disclosure. If there is no exemption that applies, no public interest needs to be demonstrated, no reason needs to be demonstrated, no locus standi is required. Now, Section 20 deals with penalty, which is the teeth of the Act, which is the reason the Act works. If information is not given without reasonable cause, the Information Commission must penalize the defaulting PIO at the rate of rupees 250 per day of delay at a maximum cap of 25,000 rupees. Unfortunately, most commissioners treat penalty as the equivalent of death penalty. Therefore, they apply it very rarely, which is a false way of looking at the law. If there is no reasonable cause for denying information, penalty must be applied. And if it is applied properly, the right to information regime will grow by leaps and bounds, and the citizen's fundamental right will be assured. Now, I'd like to deal with the Girish Deshpande judgment, since this is a system, this is a group of law students and faculty members of law. I think it'd be interesting looking at, people quite often discuss the amendments to the RTI Act brought about by the government. Yes, I was also opposed to it, and I think we did not need any amendment to the RTI Act. But having said that, the damage to the RTI Act it has done is very small. It has only taken the power to appoint to decide the salaries and the grades of the information commissioners, which was not required, which should not have been done. But the damage is not more because they have not changed the exemptions. They have not touched the powers of the commission. So everything else remains. The only thing they have done is that they have tried to exercise some control over the commissioners, not desirable. But even now, let me be honest and make an honest admission. Most commissioners, not just of Information Commission, of human rights, women's, children's, lokayuks, all these are political patronage appointees, by and large. There are a few exceptions, but barring a few exceptions, most of these are appointed with no process, no criteria. And therefore, to say that these are not beholden to the government is not really a reality. So the Girish Deshpande judgment was unique and it was an SLP really speaking. So it should not form the basis of law, but it's being used as a golden rule all across the nation. The Apex Court held that copies of all memos, show cause notices and orders of censure, punishment, assets, income tax returns, details of gifts received by a public servant are personal information as defined in Clause J of RTI Act Section 8(1) and hence exempted and cannot be furnished under RTI Act. It gives no reasoning as to how 8(1)J applies. It does not say that this information would not be given to Parliament. It doesn't say anything like that. It just proclaims. If you go through the entire judgment, there is nowhere where you can find any reasoning of law. The performance of an employee, and the judgment also says, the performance of an employee officer in an organization is primarily a matter between the employee and the employer. And normally those aspects are governed by the service rules which fall under the expression personal information. The court says this is a matter between the employer and the employee. Who is the employer of the public servants? Is a question I'd like to pose, and I wish the Supreme Court had answered that. Who is the employer? My understanding of democracy is the citizens of India are the employers. They are the government, they are the rulers of the government, and therefore they are the employers, and this statement, I think, is unfortunate. No reasonable explanation has been given, and I'll explain to you how peculiar situation it has created. In the ADR PUCL judgment, the Supreme Court ruled that citizens have a right to know about the assets of those who want to become public servants, those who stand for elections, even if they are not public servants. This is a Supreme Court ruling in the ADR PUCL case, because of which all the people who stand for elections have to file affidavits giving their list of assets. Girish Deshpande says public servants need not publish, their assets of public servants need not be known to citizens. To me, it is almost like saying that if a girl and boy want to get married, they have to disclose certain information about each other to each other before getting married. If they get married, after marriage, they need not disclose the same category of information to each other. I think there is a flaw in this reasoning. Now, privacy has been the subject matter of everything is called privacy. I had asked DOPT about number of IAS officers whose annual confidential reports, or what's now known as APAR, was not received for a period of 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and 4 years. And the PIO said 8(1)J, this is personal information. It relates to natural persons. Details of certificates issued, details of who are the people enjoying subsidies. Most of these things are being refused on the basis that it's personal information, and this is justified by the Girish Deshpande judgment. Unfortunately, this could be argued that it's an SLP and therefore no reasoning was required, and there's no ratio in this judgment. However, two subsequent Supreme Court judgments, the R.K. Jain versus Union of India, in which what was sought was the report given by the head of CSTAT about a panel member on his integrity. This is the information sought, and the Supreme Court held that this is, in view of Girish Deshpande, this is information which cannot be given. Worse still, in Canara Bank versus C.S. Sham, what was sought was details of officers transferred from one branch of Canara Bank in a particular period. Refused under 8(1)J, went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, because it is personal information, it shall not be provided. This is now damaging RTI tremendously. At this rate, any letter issued by somebody can be said it's personal and therefore will be denied. All the other conditionalities of 8.1j have been overlooked, and just every personal information is sought to be denied under 8.1j. And I would like to point out, with relationship to privacy, 3 Supreme Court judgments I'd like to quote. In the Kharak Singh judgment, it is said, any right to privacy must encompass and protect the personal intimacies of the home, the family, marriage, motherhood, procreation, and childbearing. In Govind versus State of MP, it was said, any right to privacy must encompass and protect the personal intimacies of the home, the family, marriage, motherhood, procreation, and childbearing. In R. Rajgopal, there is a very clear ratio arrived after a lot of discussion, which says, 1, a citizen has a right, it's a summary of the judgment which has been recorded in the judgment itself. A citizen has a right to safeguard the privacy of his own, his family, marriage, procreation, motherhood, childbearing, and education, amongst others. None can publish anything concerning the above matters without his consent, whether truthful or otherwise, and whether laudatory or critical. 2, once a matter becomes a matter of public record, the right to privacy no longer subsists, and it becomes a legitimate subject for comment by press and media, amongst others. We are, however, of the opinion that in the interest of decency, Article 19(2), an exception must be carved out to this rule, which is a female who is the victim of a sexual assault, kidnap, abduction, or like offense should not further be subjected to the indignity of her name and the incident being publicized in press or media. 3, in the case of public officials, it is obvious the right to privacy, or for that matter, the remedy of action for damages, is simply not available with respect to their acts and conduct relevant to the discharge of their duty. I believe Girish Deshpande and the subsequent judgments are contrary to the earlier judgments of the Supreme Court, and this is highly damaging. And my last point I'd like to make is, RTI is a fundamental right of citizens under Article 19(1)(a), which guarantees freedom of speech and expression. A catena of Supreme Court judgments have recognized that this includes a right to information and the right to publish. Therefore, my simple argument is the same set of restrictions must apply to all 3. In right to publish, if there is an allegation made against somebody, it can be published in a newspaper. The same information, if it's on government record, should be given. And my position is that for all these 3, right to publish, right to information, right to speech, the same set of conditions has to be applicable since they fall under Article 19(1)(a). The only permissible restrictions are given in Article 19(2), which permits reasonable restrictions in the interest of the sovereignty and integrity of the state of India, the security of the state, friendly relations with foreign states, public order, decency or morality, or in relation to contempt of court, defamation, or incitement to an offense. The only matters relating to privacy that I can figure out in these words is decency or morality. What is violative of decency or morality must not be given to Parliament, must not be given to citizens. This has been adequately covered in the Kharak Singh case, in the Rajgopal case, and the Govind case. And therefore, I had hoped that maybe in Puttaswamy they should have explained. There were earlier Supreme Court judgments, all of which have a certain consistency. They do not claim to represent completely. In 547 pages, I wish the Supreme Court had spent 5 pages or 2 pages defining what would be covered by 8.1j and what would be covered under privacy. I hope there's a larger discussion on the Girish Deshpande judgment, because it's a very bad constraint on the right to information, which is a fundamental right of citizens. And if today we are asked to give reasons for seeking information, tomorrow we will be asked to give reasons to speak. We will be asked to give reasons to publish. And this would be very dangerous for our fundamental rights. Thank you, friends. Thank you very much.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir, for beautifully explaining this concept or that how this RTI information, there is a what is the misconception about the RTI, that RTI is used as a interrogation, and also that you also given the example of the other scam, that how you your experience with the other scam, and you how you try to dispose or how you try to come up with that. You also explained the privacy issue with the reference to the Puttu Swami case in a beautiful way, and you also explained the how the information commissioners is being appointed, and the mechanism is requires some kind of correction also. So there are some questions. I think we will take the questions after the study session at lecture. So after that we will open the floor for the discussion. So now I am inviting to the Sunny Substance sir to deliver us, enlighten us. Over to you, Sunny sir.
Thank you. Sri Shailesh Gandhi, former Central Information Commissioner, Mr. Jayaprakash Amina, Assistant Professor, Campus Law Center, and dear participants. A very good morning to all of you. So to start with, just a reference to the topic, the right to information in India, a boon or a chimera. To start with, it is a boon. There is no doubting of that. It is a boon, and it has come as one of the best legislations we have in this country. And the second part of the topic, is it a chimera? It is, and it is not. It is the way you treat it. And it is not when you go by the possibilities. It has got great potential, and it is being used. People are using it, and people are getting relief from it. But if you ask me whether it is fully functional, I have my own doubts. So, about the crowd which brought about this wonderful law, right to information. So, for this crowd, May, the month of May is an important month, because for the past 29 years, on May 1st, RT enthusiasts, academicians, intellectuals, people from the judiciary, all used to gather in a small place in Bhim Tehsil of Rajsamand district of Rajasthan to celebrate the May Day, the International Labour Day. So as you know, we are having this webinar. This time there was no May Day on May 1st in Bhim, and it was a big disappointment. But it was not really. Like the organizers of May Day, which is considered to be one of the best in the country, and even compared to the May Days in Berlin and the former East Berlin and all. So they were celebrating the 30th. This was the 30th year of the May Day in Bhim. So these people could not reach because of the pandemic. Aruna Roy, Nikhil Dey, Shankar Singh, all of them, like Shailesh mentioned their names, they decided to do something. They decided to go digital. They invited all the associated people associated with the past movement, right to information, and even before that, minimum wages, and of course later on right to food. All these people who were associated with the May Day function and MKSS. MKSS is Mazdoor Kisan Shakti Sangathan. To write, to draw, or make poems on things associated with this movement, with the May Day and the right to information movement, in the activities related to the right movement. So they were all pulled together, and on May 1st, it was posted on the website. That was a draft. So now the final draft is final. The compilation is getting ready. That would come to some 135 pages. That has come out beautifully, and that would be posted very soon. So that is how you cope with the situation, and there's a wonderful document on right to information. The moment the people and the sentiments expressed throughout these 30 years of the struggle of MKSS. RTI Act is perhaps a unique act, not only because of the provisions, because of the novelty, because of the earnestness behind the formation of that. It is again a unique act made on public demand. Unlike most of the legislation, which is decided by very few people, bureaucracy, politicians, and all that. Of course, they are all need-based. They should be need-based only, making legislation. But this one, RTI Act, was made on demand. Demand from the public. It came from the public, and of course, supported by intellectuals and policy makers and all that. It grew into a movement. That is why, unlike POCSO or Rajasthan's own, like that is more important for Rajasthan because of the child marriages, prohibition of child marriage, etc., are not considered to be people's legislations, because even though it is involving public, it is in the interest of public, but it remains mostly for the police and enforcement authorities to look into them, unlike the RTI. RTI 2005, RTI Act 2005 placed India among the most evolved democracies. And I would be happy to mention the participation of the media, because I am supposed to speak more on the media part of it. Like along with Aruna Roy, Nikhil Dey, Shankar Singh, Shekhar Singh, a lot of other people whom I cannot, like, because of the limitations of time, I cannot mention. There were people like Kuldeep Nayar-ji, eminent journalist, Prabhat Joshi-ji, former editor of Jansatta, Ajit Bhattacharya of Press Institute of India, all that now, and even Arundhati Roy, writer. I remember seeing, of course, and interacting with them in the villages of Rajsamand, in Padyatras, in public hearing, which are called Jan Sunwais. They were all there. So it was, of course, it is expected that media supports RTI Act. I mean, anything leading to disclosure of information, details, documents, and all that. But then the ground reality may not be that media is really involved presently in the processes of taking out truth. Media has got its own, if I can say, compulsions, like now with this COVID and all that. As a former VC of a media university, I would say that the journalists are the worst sufferers. All are suffering because of loss of jobs and loss of salaries and cuts in salaries and extra time, working time, and all that. But I am aware that many of these publications are paying some lump sum money to journalists. Some of them are, asked to take part of their salaries. Mind you, these things are like newspapers are coming out, channels are working, advertisement is there, even though it is less. But then they have reduced pages in the case of newspapers. So when they make profit, journalists, media, journalists are not given a share of it. But when they make losses, journalists are asked to share the losses. That is how it works. So I won't be outrightly blaming journalists for not taking that is their duty to take interest, but maybe they are too preoccupied with the mundane things of day-to-day existence. So that happens. There is no need to stress on the importance of freedom of information, though I would like Shailesh went in detail about these things, but I would like to remind especially the students that first session of the UN Assembly in 1946 had adopted the resolution 59-1, which stated that freedom of information is a fundamental human right and the section of all freedom of which UN is consecrated. Freedom of expression includes right to see, right to receive and impart information, and right to access information held by public authorities. Stressing on the media further, the UN resolution adds, the media have an essential role in the development of an information society, mind you, information society, and are recognized as an important contributor to freedom of expression and plurality of information. I want to dwell upon plurality of information. In a monopolistic way, plurality of news, plurality of information is also a victim. When you have monopolistic newspapers, one newspaper coming out from 48 centers and 20 Indian states, and there are many such newspapers, they have a set of news which they would avoid, and there are certain categories of news you are forced to read frequently. So of late, certain news items are not at all in fashion. One should not use the word fashion. Not at all in trend. You don't find news about Panchayat Raj. You don't find much news about rural economy, rural development, agriculture. When the sabjis are expensive in the city mandis, then there is news, not otherwise. When farmers are dying, that is okay, that is okay. Like they become just numbers, you can add on to that. Even numbers are not like only when Sainath went and reported it extensively, when people started noticing that. So in media, there is an expression, very popular expression. News is what somebody somewhere wants to suppress. All the rest is advertising. That's a little bit of a cynical kind of thing. But if you look at it, it is true also. News is what somebody somewhere wants to suppress. All the rest is advertising. Same thing with information also. The Rights Campaign attempts to excavate truth against all efforts by the vested interest, bureaucracy, politicians to suppress news. We know that there is a lot of corruption in our society, and there is a lot of arbitrariness in decision making, in execution, and also a lot of injustice. Like a country where people can die walking 600 kilometers, 800 kilometers, pulling their pregnant wife on four-wheeled carts. Today I was reading in the newspaper, I had a glance. 27 people 27 stranded migrants walking back to their villages died in various accidents yesterday in 24 hours, last 24 hours. What kind of just society is that? When you talk about Rajasthan's right to information movement, the Rights Campaign, initially I remember, started with minimum wages. Minimum wages because there was this drought relief operations. Drought relief government did not accept that it was a full job. It was relief is different. Charity, they even use, some of the officers use the word charity. Charity, then we cannot bargain. So anyway, that was the starting. That was that Dharna in Raj Samant started the triggered the rights movement in Rajasthan in a big way. And as you know, drought relief. Now, of course, there is good drought proofing because of MGNREGA, Mahatma Gandhi Narega, because jobs are available. And the other day, the concerned minister in Rajasthan was saying that, or claiming that 22 lakh persons were employed in Narega in Rajasthan. So Narega kind of took care of this drought. That was kind of drought proofing in a way. But Narega always had, no, before Narega, the drought relief always had a lot of corruption. Corruption, money, the allocation of the funds, whether the funds are fully used. Secondly, the second part, the muster rolls prepared in the name of the people employed in these relief operations, whether they are real. Some of them were dead, some of them did not exist. Somebody was drawing money, even though small money, but then collectively that amounted to a lot of money for those who are middlemen, brokers, and those supervisors, and also local politicians. That is what made, not a journalist, P. Sainath write something like everybody loves a big drought, everybody loves a good drought, which is an award-winning book on corruption in drought relief. So the demand for documents started from there, and the famous MKS's slogan, Hamara Paisa, Hamara Hisab. And the second one, Hum Janenge, Hum Jiyenge. This is very crucial. No? Hum Janenge, we will know, we want information, and we will survive, we will live. That is our part, that is as important as our life. That is why Aruna Roy says, corruption, remedy for corruption is the understanding that the government money is public money, and the information how it is spent or not spent should be given to the public, and there should be full accountability for the money spent or the money received. The RTI movement in Rajasthan grew organically with people's participation, and also, of course, at various stages of lawmaking. Journalists also had their contribution, rightfully, I would say. The first draft of the law was drafted in Lal Bahadur Shastri Academy. Harsh Mandir and NC Saxena did that, and they invited MKSS, Mazdoor Kisan Shakti Sangathan, to join to give a broad base to the proposed law. Then it was referred to NCPRI, National Campaign for People's Right to Information, that is NCPRI, which was an affiliated body, which is also an active body now. In NCPRI referred it to the Press Council of India. And that time, Justice P.B. Sawant, who played a very active role in this legislation, drafting the legislation, he was the chairman of the Press Council of India. So things started moving from there. Prior to that also, Government of India's Department of Personnel had a working group under the chairmanship of H.D. Shuri, the common coastman, H.D. Shuri, which submitted its report in 1997. This was joined by the Press Council of India, the Press Institute of India, the National Campaign for People's Right to Information, NCPRI, and Forum for Right to Information. And a joint resolution was ready by 2000. So, like Shailesh mentioned it earlier also, Freedom of Information Bill, we had one before that, like in the year 2002, the Parliament passed that bill, but it was not implemented, the experts saw that, experts as well as the activists found that there was not much teeth in that. So it was repealed by the UPA government, which came to power in 2004. And thereafter, the National Advisory Council, NSC, which was headed by the then Congress President Sonia Gandhi, NSC started taking interest in this legislation. So finally, India's RTI Act. Like, I would like to point out Freedom of Information Act. Some of the countries use that, as Shailaji again mentioned. But there is a big difference now. Freedom of Information Bill and Freedom of Information Act. And Right to Information Act, right. The stress is on the right of the people, right of the citizen to procure, ask for details, procure it. That is how this act is better. And when it was passed in 2005, it was the second best act in the world. Of course, later on it slipped because, of course, there are reasons like there are 61 points on which these things are indicators on which these are kind of rated. The rating agency Center for Law and Democracy, that is CLD, that's an NGO which is working along with Access Info Europe. And now they say our position is 8th. This was last year or so, I don't know the latest, but it has slipped from the second position. So the states also were doing their jobs, like from 1996 onwards. Rajasthan passed this act, State Act, in 2002. Tamil Nadu 96. Tamil Nadu had a comparatively, because we cannot blame that it was the beginning only. So that act also was formulated by the Press Council of India. Then later Goa had another in 97. Karnataka had the provision of showing the documents in 97, but the act came into existence in 2000 along with that of Maharashtra. The Union Territory of Delhi followed suit in 2001. And interestingly, the act passed in 2004, Jammu and Kashmir Act. Now there is no Jammu and Kashmir state. That act is supposed to be very powerful, good act, appreciated by the experts and activists alike. So now the question arises, how the media making use of the provisions of the RTI Act. Big newspapers. I was talking to two of my friends who happen to be information commissioners, media friends. They were my colleagues not in the same organization, but in Jaipur. One was in Madhya Pradesh, he retired. The other is in Rajasthan, serving. I asked them what they think of RTI and the media, how media people are making use of RTI provisions. It's a known fact that many of the big newspapers, national dailies, have RTI cells. There is a team also, 2-3 persons filing RTI applications, following it up, like even asking supplementary questions, and then making stories out of that. Over a period, they may wait also. I mean, cornering a particular, like maybe even the government department on a particular topic. It needs a lot of patience, also a lot of pointed questioning also. That is what my friend said. Journalists unfortunately lack. I am a little bit embarrassed to say that most of the journalists lack information on RTI Act. They don't simply care. It is not just because RTI is not important. RTI, the good results RTI can provide is not important or not useful for the people. It is because of a particular approach of attitude of journalists in general happening in country and elsewhere in the world of indifference. As I told you earlier, certain areas are a big no to media in this country now. Fashion parade is fine. 20 journalists like Sainath once mentioned, they all would be there to attend it with photographers, 40 photographers, video cameras, all that. But an issue of a rural area, poverty, unemployment, even otherwise civic activities like Panchayat election, not very important. Rural industry, all finished, nobody bothers. Agriculture, some of the companies provoke farmers to plant try out new species, new trees. There was something like jojoba in Rajasthan. They tried it, and a lot of people invested money and wasted their land. Nothing came out of jojoba. Then this Ratan Jo thing was there. That started by like Indian Oil Company, a replacement for oil, fossil fuel. Nothing came out of that. Lot of land was allotted by the government to people. I don't know what happened to that land now, wasteland. So these are all big rackets happening, and the media is not taking care of that. The price, the alertness is the price one has to pay for democracy. And if the media is not alert, then we are going to lose the sheen of our democracy also. This is a situation in general, and now my journalist friends also point out that Shailesh would be well informed about this aspect, that some of the journalists or so-called journalists or media, the information activists, have made it into a danda, a business, and they jokingly say, this information commissioners also say, Sujana ka Rojgar, danda, the business of information seeking. So this also is taking place in a way, but there are shining examples also to cite. One is that of, you must have heard his name, one Shyamlal Yadav, who is a journalist with Indian Express in Delhi. He says, he is a much awarded journalist. He says, all my award stories are through RTI applications. And he has written a book, Journalism Through RTI. I would recommend this book, even though I haven't seen it myself. I'll procure one anyway. So I was wondering, as a former VC, that why can't the journalism universities and departments have a course, it can be of 3 months, 6 months maximum, on how to make good use of RTI Act and its provisions to gather information and put to good use by making reports and articles. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Substantial, sir. You beautifully explained this way that what is the role of the media in the development of the RTI, and what are the roles of the journalists who play in that development of the RTI, and an RTI movement also, because this RTI movement also started from the Rajasthan, and you also you also have done the coverage of the Rajasthan during when you were the former deputy editor in the Hindu for more than 14 years. And you also, Sari Sapin sir also explain what is the role of the media in contemporary scenario, and you also link it with the ongoing crisis of the COVID-19. And you also explain that how the general public see it as the journalists, that what they say, and you beautifully quoted the Sujna ka Rojgar. Yes, it's a duty of the journalist to carry out, to disclose the truth. So it's not Rojgar, it's their profession, and you very beautifully quoted it, this thing. Okay, so now our floor is open for the questions. If anyone have the question, so now the floor is open for the question. If anyone have the question, you can raise hand. If you cannot if and you also can type also that. In meanwhile time we also get some questions, and there are some particular questions from the resource person. So I will go one by one. So the first question which we received from Ravi is that, can RTI be filed through email, and any judgment on this point? So this question was specifically asked to the former CIC, Mr. Shailesh Gandhi. Please, sir, answer this.
There is no need for any judgment. Section 6(1) categorically states RTI request can be by written means, by computer generated or emails. So this is in the law. You don't need a specific judgment. I mean, there is nobody who can say I need a specific judgment for this. And in fact, RTI online has been started by the central government. Maharashtra has started it. Some other states have also started it, I believe. So there's not an iota of doubt that it can be done. However, if you send it by normal email, not using the RTI online facility, you will have to ensure that your application fee of 10 rupees gets connected with your application. That is the only small problem that actually comes by email, unless there is an RTI online facility.
Okay, sir. There is another question from Madhusudan Sharma, and he say that during the this COVID-19 crisis going on, and he see that the public procurement happening in the pandemic, but I am confused whether I shall wait for the normalcy or continue or will file RTI after this normalcy.
This is a difficult question to answer. I'm also between two minds. On the one hand, RTI is certainly important, but I also believe that under the current health emergency, perhaps we should keep it to a minimum. That's my belief. A lot of RTI people don't agree with me. They say, why should we? I'm not talking of giving up our fundamental rights, but going slow on that, recognizing that the government resources will be very strained. But if you feel something is very important and urgent, go ahead and file.
Okay, sir. Second question is from Vishal Anand, and he very question asked this reference to that the privacy is the fundamental right of anyone. And so he asked the question whether biometric attendance details of the employee of any organization can be given under RTI Act or not.
Look at it the other way around. I mean, don't just ask Shailesh. The only exemption that somebody is likely to claim is 81J. Now, if 81J is to be claimed, is it a public activity giving the biometric attendance? I think the answer is yes. Is it an intrusion on privacy? My own feeling is no. And yet, I would suggest if a PIO denies information, ask him to say that he will deny it to Parliament also, or state legislature, depending on whether it's a state government body or a central government body. Insist when they claim 81J, chances are they'll claim 81J. He may not. In my opinion, the biometric attendance should be given.
Okay, sir. Second question which we received from the some participant, that can we file RTI to know how PM Care funds has been spent?
Sorry?
This question is, can we file RTI to know how PM Cares fund has been spent?
PM Cares fund, we do not know the actual structure of the PM Cares funds, at least I don't know. See, the law defines public authority as any government body, also anything financed by government or controlled by government. Logically, I believe it should fall, but I have not seen the formation papers of the PM Care Fund. Without that, it is slightly difficult to comment on a matter like this.
Okay, sir. Another question is coming from Priyam, and he asked often the RTI details of the agreement MOU between the state governments and the private companies are rejecting. State is that it is a third party information. Wouldn't it all states related activities, including public procurement of goods, fall under the purview of RTI?
Firstly, Section 11 is not an exemption. First thing to understand. A lot of people are saying this Section 11 and therefore I'm rejecting. False. The only exemptions are given in Section 8 and 9. And I repeat, outside of 8 and 9, there are no exemptions. Section 11 is a procedure that ensures what we call natural principles of natural justice. The section starts by saying if the PIO intends to disclose the information relating to or given by a third party in confidence, then now when he says intends to give, that means the PIO has come to the conclusion that information is available and information should be given and that no exemption applies. If he believes an exemption applies, he must apply the exemption. The section then goes on to say he will inform the third party of his intention to give information, that he intends to give information, and if he has any objections, to give submissions in writing or orally. And the law says such submissions shall be kept in view by the PIO. What does it mean when it says keep in view? Keep in view with respect to the provisions of the RTI Act. Third party has not been given veto. Even my Prime Minister has no veto on the RTI Act, on my fundamental right. If the PIO is convinced that his first decision was wrong, that the information is not exempt, and the third party shows some reasoning by which the exemption applies, rejection will have to be done based on section 8(1) only. It cannot be done based on section 11. Or let us assume there's a copyright of the person and somebody says, I want a copy of the book or a DVD in a censor board. Then that person may ask the third party may say, this is my copyright, you cannot give it. And that PIO may feel convinced. Actually, he would not yet refer it, he would do it himself. But this is what third party means, and this is what section 11 means. Section 11 is completely wrongly treated as an exemption. It means they have not understood the fundamentals of the law.
Okay, sir. There are one participant, Vikas Tiwari, also raised hand. So we will, he will speak to you directly and he will ask the question. Vikas, I enable your audio. Please ask. Go. Vikas Tiwari.
My question is from Sailesh Gandhi, sir. Sir, I would like to ask this that agencies like, as Sebastian sir also mentioned, Center for Law and Democracy releases their global rating, RTI ratings, and India slipped after the last amendment 2 points. And the striking thing is Afghanistan ranked top in the list. So in a nation like Afghanistan, where we are not sure about the law and order situation, so where we should realize, is there any model law of RTI around the globe? What we should follow, what we do have?
I'm very familiar with this.
Okay.
This center run by Toby Mendel, he's a very good friend. He's a contributor to my book also. Basically looks at the provisions of the law. There is an ideal format they have developed. Basically, depending on the format, they say give so many marks and whether it meets this or not. And as later countries come in, one after the other, they try and improve on the law provisions. I repeat, provisions. Even according to that provisioning, we rank amongst the top 6 or 7 in the world. In actual implementation, we are probably at 60, 70. What is important is implementation of the law, not the provisions of the law. In the United States, the provisions will be lower down in ranking. But that does not mean the law. And Afghanistan, there's hardly any law. I mean, India is not too good, but Afghanistan, I would be very proudly say that India is far, far better than Afghanistan in terms of laws. It is not a matter of slipping, etc. But what we need to do is ensure implementation. As I gave you one example of Girish Deshpande, I told you there's a provision to penalize, but information commissioners don't penalize. I told you information commissioners, a significant number of them don't understand the law and have no focus for transparency. These are flaws. Unless we remove these flaws, we have a troubled position. Don't worry about the international rankings. We have not slipped at all. It is just that a new country comes with a law and it says, my provisions will be better. Quite often they are guided by Toby Mendel himself.
Okay, that's beautifully answered you this question that our law is more perfect than the Afghanistan laws. And when some new country enact law, it's obvious on that because that is not implemented and people assume that how it will work. So if we analyze anything, we for implementation, then it will obviously it will be good, and it will be difficult then how it will work. So next question. Okay, thank you Vikas for asking this good question. Next question is from Naveen. I allowed to talk to you. Yes, Naveen, ask.
सर नमस्कार, मेरा नाम नवीन अग्रवाल है और मेरा प्रश्न आदरणीय शैलेश गांधी सर से ही है। और मैं बताना चाहूंगा कि मैं खुद पब्लिक अथॉरिटी में सूचना अधिकारी हूँ, पब्लिक इंफॉर्मेशन ऑफिसर हूँ, और हम लोगों का प्रयास रहता है कि हम ज्यादा से ज्यादा इंफॉर्मेशन लोगों तक दे नियमों के तहत। अब मेरा प्रश्न यह है कि हमारा एक व्यक्ति है जो आदतन हमसे इंफॉर्मेशन मांगते रहते हैं, हम लोग देते भी उन्हें इंफॉर्मेशन, हम लोग देते आए हैं। और एक बार क्या हुआ कि वो कोई हमारे स्टाफ से संबंधित इंफॉर्मेशन मांग रहे थे, उन्होंने फिर पुलिस में कंप्लेंट कर दिया कि भाई ये इसी वजह से इंफॉर्मेशन उससे मांगते हैं और उन्होंने मुझसे पैसे की डिमांड की थी, जो भी वजह होंगी। उसके बाद वो जो नागरिक है आवेदक आदतन जो मांगते थे इंफॉर्मेशन, उन्होंने अचानक से कुछ जो पिछले एप्लीकेशन उन्होंने आरटीआई के किए थे 10-15 पेंडिंग थे, वो वापस ले लिए। उन्होंने एक रिटर्न में एप्लीकेशन देके कि भाई मैं मेरे जितने भी आवेदन है आरटीआई के मैं वापस ले रहा हूँ और आगे से मुझे किसी भी आरटीआई एप्लीकेशन का रिप्लाई देने की जरूरत नहीं है। फिर उसके बाद में कुछ समय उनका बंद रहा, फिर उन्होंने एप्लीकेशन दिए तो हम लोग क्या करते थे रिप्लाई में कि उन्हीं का लेटर हम लोग उनको जोड़कर दे देते थे कि आपने ही मना किया है और हम लोग आपका ये जो लेटर है उसका सम्मान करते हो, आपको इन्फॉर्मेशन नहीं दे रहे और आपको आप अपील में जाना तो आप 30 दिन में जा सकते हैं। ऐसा चलते रहा, उसके ऊपर वो अपील में नहीं गए। उन 8-10 एप्लीकेशन आए, अब उनका एप्लीकेशन आया कि आप क्यों मना कर रहे थे, मैंने भले ही मना किया था लेकिन अब मैं इन्फॉर्मेशन मांग रहा हूँ तो आपने देना चाहिए, और वो अभी फर्स्ट अपील में आए। तो हमने ऐसी परिस्थिति में क्या करना चाहिए सर?
नवीन जी, मैं इसको दूसरी तरह से पूछता हूँ।
हाँ।
मैं या आप अपने मौलिक अधिकार गिव अप कर सकते हैं क्या?
नहीं
I give up our fundamental rights?
नहीं करना चाहिए सर, ऐसा मेरी सोच है।
जो जनाब ने वो जो पहले चिट्ठी लिखी,
हाँ,
और वो किया, वो गलत था।
हाँ।
और मेरा सुझाव तो ये है कि आपको वो इन्फॉर्मेशन लेके आपके नोटिस बोर्ड पे लगानी थी। अगर आपकी वेबसाइट है तो वेबसाइट पे भी लगा देनी थी।
हाँ।
कोई कहे मैं विड्रॉ करता हूँ, बोलिए नहीं हम तो सूचना देंगे, क्योंकि सूचना सब जनता की है, उस एक की नहीं है।
सही।
और अगर कोई इस तरह से है, मैं समझता हूँ कुछ लोग ऐसे ही परेशान करने को करते हैं। दो चीजें सजेस्ट करूंगा। एक डीओपीटी का भी ऑफिस मेमोरेंडम है, सब आरटीआई एप्लीकेशन एंड उसके जवाब आप अगर हो सके तो आपके वेबसाइट पे डाल दीजिए।
बिल्कुल सर, सबसे
अच्छा रहेगा। अगर कोई इस तरह का बहुत करता है तो उसका एक नोटिस बोर्ड बना के उसका आरटीआई एप्लीकेशन देन उसको, क्योंकि नॉर्मली उसको पहचानते नहीं है लोग। लोक लाज जिसको कहते हैं उसको भी आती है। तो यही मेरा सुझाव है। वो जो उसने विड्रॉ किया वो गलत था। और मेरा सुझाव
सर, आवेदन आ रहे उनके अनावश्यक जो पूछते हैं अभी जो उनके आ रहे हैं, मतलब उसके बाद में फिर से उन्होंने शुरू कर दिया। और हमारी तो सोच ये रहती सर, कोई बाय पोस्ट भी आता है तो हम सोचते नहीं कि कौन है मांगने वाला, हम लोग इन्फॉर्मेशन दे देते हैं देने योग्य है तो। लेकिन ऐसे परिस्थिति में क्या करें सर हम लोग?
अगर वो बहुत सारी कर रहे हैं, एक मुझे बताइए, आप उनसे पैसा लेते हैं कि नहीं? फी 2 रुपए पर पेज का
फी लेते हैं सर हम। यदि 2-4-5 पेज की इन्फॉर्मेशन है तो हम फ्री में दे देते हैं।
नहीं, एक सुझाव है। देखिए, अगर कोई इस तरह का है, नॉर्मली जो आप कर रहे हैं सही कर रहे हैं कि 2-5 पेज का है तो ऐसे ही दे देने का। मगर जब कोई इस तरह का आदमी है जो बहुत बार बार करता है, उसको हर बार 2 पेज है तो 4 रुपए भरवाइए।
नहीं तो वो भर देते ना सर।
नहीं, मैंने ये देखा है दिल्ली में जब मैं कमिश्नर था, कुछ लोग जो ऐसे बार बार ऐसे ही फिजूल में करते थे, उनको जब पैसा भरने को तो उनको भी होती थी, वो बंद कर जाते थे। बट खैर वो आप देखिए। बाकी मैं तो ये कहूँ कि ये मौलिक अधिकार है, और अगर आपको लगता है कि कुछ ऐसा है तो वेबसाइट पे आपका आरटीआई प्लस इंफॉर्मेशन जो आप देते हैं वो डाल दीजिएगा।
अच्छा, ठीक है, थैंक
यू। नवीन जी, आप कहाँ से हैं अभी, कहाँ से बोल रहे हैं?
सर मैं नागपुर महाराष्ट्र से बोल रहा हूँ।
ओके, थैंक यू। नवीन जी ने अच्छे क्वेश्चन पूछा है। एक प्रैक्टिकल प्रॉब्लम होती है पीआईओस, और ये प्रॉब्लम जब हम हमारे इंस्टीट्यूशन में होते हैं तो हम भी फेस करते हैं। कुछ बड़ी विदाउट एनी इंटेंशन की आती है, जस्ट टू उनको ट्रबल करना होता है, बोदर करना होता है। दिस काइंड ऑफ द सिचुएशन व्हिच वी आल्सो फेस, सो वेरी रिलेवेंट क्वेश्चन इज देयर। Okay, so now next question is from our colleague and from Mr. Varun. And this question is that actually firstly, PIO don't answer most of the time till matter reach CIC. After first year, after 1 year, many times utility of information lost. And CIC also reluctant to impose penalty and compensation. What is the remedy left for citizen in this situation?
Getting better commissioners. In my opinion, commissioners must ensure that decisions are generally given in less than 90 days. Otherwise, RTI becomes useless. This I have been stating when I was a commissioner. When I was a commissioner, most of my cases were finished in less than 90 days. Some rare case would go beyond, but otherwise within 90 days, because otherwise RTI has no meaning. Commissioners are doing nothing worthwhile. And I believe it's the commissioner's job to ensure that within 90 days they should give a decision. B, if they PIOs and do not give decisions in less than 90 days, RTI will keep suffering. We have one of the best provisions of the law, but we are not implementing it because of poor commissioners.
Okay, one question is from Sunny Sebastian sir, that this question is asked from Priyam, and that how media houses utilize the tool of RTI. Are there specific mandate or guidelines by media houses for journalists that suggest that RTI should be used as source to ensure reports?
Yeah, of course, big newspapers, the so-called national dailies, they have RTI cells, a team of journalists doing RTI applications, putting in, following it up, also looking into the areas where they can file RTI. Like my friend commissioner, retired commissioner, told me that most of the journalists fail to pinpointedly ask questions. That becomes a waste of time and it brings nothing. But like in the assemblies and the parliament, asking question also is an art. How to ask, how to put up a question, that needs some kind of skill. When it comes to journalists, that skill should be there. When it comes to a common man, okay, that could be plain, simple. And but on the part of the commission, there won't be any additional thing because what is asked, that is being answered. So it is for a journalist to ask the right type of questions which would elicit the answers they want to get. So media houses have these teams, but of late, as they lose interest in many things, slowly the problem is losing interest. So of late the priorities change.
Okay, sir. Next question is from Shailesh Gandhi sir, that this question is from Suman Sankar, and she asked two questions. We will go one by one. The first question is that where to lodge complaint and which remedy can be availed if CPIO or First Appellate Authority of reputed higher educational institute provide false information, changing queries repeatedly and purposely.
If it is false information, a complaint should be filed with the Information Commission, state or central, depending on whether it's a state body or a central body, under Section 18 of the RTI Act, saying that this is false information. But I must clarify, false information means information not as per records. To give an example, supposing there is an illegal building that has come up in a plot right opposite the PIO's office. If the PIO's record shows that there is no building there and he says as per record there is no building, that is not false information. It has told you that there is an illegal building. So if it, however, based on records you can show that it's false information, then the commission must penalize this person who gives the false information based on Section 18 of the law.
Okay. Someone asked second question is that CPI or First Appellate Authority of a bank refused to provide list of officers employed in a certain zone and assess declaration by them, citing third party information. Please suggest way ahead.
They are not understanding the law at all. Third party, it cannot be an exemption, which is what you can point out. However, having said that, let me point out, going by the Girish Deshpande judgment, this could be refused. In my opinion, the Girish Deshpande judgment is per incuriam. But right now, if a person says it's Girish Deshpande judgment, it's very difficult to get recourse. Ideally, if somebody says 81J, ask them to put down in writing that they will not give this information to Parliament or state legislature. That might work. Might, I'm saying, I'm not saying 100%. But Section 11 that they've quoted is completely wrong. Section 11 is a procedure, it is not an exemption.
Okay, sir. One question on Mr. Ravi Kum will ask you directly. I allowed to talk. Ravi, you can ask questions. Ravi, I unmuted you. I think there is some connection problem. Yes, Naveen is also having some other question. Naveen, yes, please ask.
सर मेरा प्रश्न फिर से शैलेश गांधी सर से, मैं दूसरा प्रश्न फिर से इसलिए कर रहा हूँ सर, बहुत कम मौके मिलते हैं आप जैसे लोगों से सर मार्गदर्शन प्राप्त करने के, और हो सकता है मैं दूसरे जो प्रश्न करता हूँ उनके अधिकारों पे अतिक्रमण भी कर रहा हूँ बार बार प्रश्न करके। मेरा सर प्रश्न एक है, दो प्रश्न है। एक तो जो 48 घंटे में जानकारी देनी पड़ती है उसके अंतर्गत किस किस प्रकार के सूचनाएं हो सकती है। दूसरा प्रश्न ये है कि जो हमने देखा है कि जैसे प्रधानमंत्री या किसी मंत्री की शैक्षणिक प्रमाण पत्र मांगे जाते हैं या किसी सरकारी अधिकारी के भी हो सकते हैं, तो वो देने चाहिए या क्यों नहीं देने, तो क्यों नहीं देने चाहिए सर?
पहला प्रश्न जो आपका था वो एक मिनट फिर से
सर 48 घंटे में जो सूचनाएं देनी रहती है
लाइफ एंड लिबर्टी,
हाँ लाइफ एंड लिबर्टी वाली,
मेरे हिसाब से अगर सूचना देने से किसी की जान या लिबर्टी पे असर पड़ सकता है तो वो सूचना 48 आवर्स में देनी चाहिए।
बिल्कुल सर।
मगर 90% लोग जो 48 आवर्स क्लेम करते हैं वो कोई लाइफ या लिबर्टी का मामला नहीं होता है।
नहीं।
तो ये जज करना जरूरी। अगर आपको लगता है कि ये सूचना नहीं देने से किसी की जान या लिबर्टी को असर होगा, किसी को लॉकअप में डाल दिया है और उसके बारे में इंफॉर्मेशन मांग रहे हैं, कह रहे हैं ये गलत है, इसको डाला है कि नहीं लॉकअप में,
हाँ।
वो इंफॉर्मेशन 48 आवर्स में आएगी।
हाँ।
यदि किसी की जान को खतरा है, समझ लीजिए कोई हेल्थ डिपार्टमेंट को कहता है कि भाई मुझे मुफ्त में यहाँ पे ऑपरेशन होना चाहिए, इसके बारे में मुझे जानकारी दीजिए, मैं एलिजिबल हूँ या नहीं, इस प्रकार की इंफॉर्मेशन लाइफ एंड लिबर्टी में आ सकती है। मगर इमिनेंट डेंजर टू लाइफ और लिबर्टी होना जरूरी है।
ठीक, थैंक यू सर।
दूसरा आपका प्रश्न था
सर शैक्षणिक प्रमाण पत्र चाहे वो किसी मंत्री के हो या फिर कोई सरकारी अधिकारी के।
मेरे हिसाब से शैक्षणिक चीज है, उसमें सिर्फ 81J में डिसअलाउ होने की सोच है। मेरे हिसाब से न ये इंट्रूजन ऑन प्राइवेसी है, न कुछ अगर राजगोपाल गोविंद कोई भी देखो तो मेरे हिसाब से ये नहीं बनता है। मेरे हिसाब से कानून ये कहता है 81J में ये नहीं आता है। मैंने ऐसे कई निर्णय दिए हैं कि ये 81J में नहीं आते हैं।
नहीं सर, कुछ डिसीजन जो थे हो सकता माननीय हाई कोर्ट के भी हो, उसमें उन्होंने सेक्शन जो 21 है संविधान की धारा जिसमें जीने का अधिकार दिया हुआ है, तो सम्मान के साथ जीने का, तो हो सकता है किसी व्यक्ति को परसेंटेज कम है ना, और वो जानकारी पब्लिक में आती तो हो सकता है कि वो काम बहुत अच्छे से कर रहा है लेकिन उसकी प्रतिष्ठा को उससे ठेस पहुंचती है, तो ऐसी इंफॉर्मेशन ना दी जाए, ऐसा मैंने कहीं पढ़ा था सर। वो थोड़ा सा
बात वो नहीं है, बात ये है कि कानून क्या है। हाँ। मैं और आप अगर हर एक बैठेगा कि सोचेगा ये क्या अच्छा होना चाहिए नहीं होना चाहिए, अपना कानून ये कहता है कि अगर पर्सनल इंफॉर्मेशन है तो 81J में आ सकती है। हाँ। मगर ये पब्लिक एक्टिविटी है, यानी जो भी पेपर उसने दिया है वो पब्लिक एक्टिविटी के जरिए ही होगा, पब्लिक एक्टिविटी के बाहर नहीं होगा। अभी प्राइवेसी का सवाल है, जैसे मैंने पहले कहा, बहुत खेद के साथ कहता हूं कि सुप्रीम कोर्ट के 9 जज बेंच ने इसको बराबर से डील नहीं किया है, ऐसा मुझे लगता है। उन्हें प्राइवेसी, या तो प्राइवेसी पे क्या बात आ सकती है, डिसेंसी और मोरालिटी की बात आ सकती है। अगर आर्टिकल 19(2) में देखो तो मेरे हिसाब से इसको ना मुझे डिसेंसी या मोरालिटी कोई वायलेट होता दिखाई देता है, मेरे हिसाब से देना चाहिए। इनफैक्ट ये जो आप बात कह रहे हैं, मैं दिल्ली में था तो डॉक्टरों की, सरकारी डॉक्टरों की सर्टिफिकेट्स मांगी थी और मिली थी, और उसमें पाया गया था कि सरकारी अस्पतालों में डॉक्टर्स फेक यूनिवर्सिटी से डिग्री लेके बैठे थे। तो ये कहना कि भारतीय कानून में 81J को बहुत अच्छी तरह घड़ा गया है। अब वो कानून ही नहीं मानेंगे तो क्या हो सकता है?
नहीं सर, मेरी भी व्यक्तिगत सोच यही है कि देना चाहिए शैक्षणिक प्रमाण पत्र, लेकिन मैंने पूछा कि भाई ऐसा तो ना हम देकर गलती कर रहे हैं, ऐसा भी नहीं होना चाहिए ना,
मेरे
इसलिए
हिसाब
मैंने
से
पूछा।
गलती नहीं है, और ये लिख के दीजिए कि मेरे हिसाब से ये किसी एग्जामिनेशन में नहीं आता है।
अच्छा, ठीक ठीक।
और आप चाहे तो मुझे ईमेल भेजिए, मैं
हाँ।
आपको 8(1)J का पूरा लंबा कारण दे सकता हूँ, भेज सकता हूँ।
ठीक है ना, थैंक
ओके,
यू।
नवीन जी, आप कौन से डिपार्टमेंट में पीआईओ हैं?
सर मैं एक महाविद्यालय में हूँ, और मैं खुद भी सर जैसे व्यक्तियों का मार्गदर्शन लेके इनडायरेक्टली सूचना का प्रशिक्षण भी मैं देता हूँ सर, यानी डीओपीटी प्रमाणित, और यशोदा में मैं गेस्ट फैकल्टी हूँ। लेकिन कुछ कुछ जो क्यूरियस थी सर, तो क्या होता है वो जैसे शैलेश गांधी सर जैसे व्यक्ति है, इनको दीर्घ अनुभव है इसका, और ये सुप्रीम कोर्ट तक लेकर जाते हैं विषय, मतलब तो इनसे जो चीज हमको मिलती है, तो मैं चाह रहा था कि कहीं मैं बताऊं दूसरों को, तो ऐसा ना हो कि भाई मैं लोगों को गलत चीज परोसूं, है ना। जो भी चीज हम किसी को बता रहे तो सही जानी चाहिए, वो उद्देश्य मेरा रहता है, इसलिए मैंने सर से प्रश्न किया।
Yes, this is also the purpose of the webinar. That what are the misconception and what are the any confusion? It should be clear, and if it is clear during this time through the webinar, then we think our webinar is success. And I hope that we are on right track. Shalishal will also be agree on that. Okay, so new question is coming from Suman Sankar will also ask a question directly to you, sir. So Suman, ask questions.
Hello, sir. This is Shuman. So I just want to know one thing. One of the employee of one central government institute has filed one petition against me in Honorable Apex Court to restrain me from filing RTI. So my question is it possible to access the RTI applications filed by me apart from CPIO?
No fundamental right can be taken away by even the President of India or the Prime Minister or the Supreme Court Chief Justice. Fundamental rights belong to you. RTI is a fundamental right. Can they tell you not to speak? When somebody says, I will not allow you to file RTI applications, ask him, can you stop me from speaking?
No.
The answer is no. If he cannot stop you from speaking, he cannot stop you from filing an RTI application, and this has to be attended.
Okay. Basically, my previous question, when I raised, you kindly responded back also. It is the same institute and same thing. They are continuously giving me wrong information purposefully. And now they filed one application. One of the employees filed the application in Apex Court to restrain me.
Go to the court and tell them, sir, nobody, including a court, including the Chief Justice of the country or the President of India, can take away your fundamental rights except through a process of law. Your fundamental rights cannot be curbed like this, lightly by somebody saying, I want to curb his fundamental rights.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for asking this question. Now, next question is coming from Sonia Pandey, and this question was from Sebastian sir, but because of some connection issue, his connection is lost. So I think that this question may be answered by the Shailesh sir. The question is that we discussed that this right includes right to information, speech, and publish, and only decency and morality should be taken into consideration. But is not certain kind of the journalism today not following decency and morality in the name of the information or publishing? So what is your view in regarding that, Shailesh sir?
If I'm limiting it to right to information, what journalism is a different matter, and then that will have to be tested. In my opinion, India is very lax on what journalists can do, but is very tight in terms of what a citizen can do, because the citizen's right is not expected. What we recognize is power. जिसके पास power है उसको importance देने का. Minister has power, MP has power, journalists have power, but the average citizen is treated as nobody, which is wrong. I completely agree that whatever applies to a journalist should apply to a citizen and vice versa in terms of right to publish, right to speech, or right to information.
Okay, most of the answer is answered by the our panelist persons. I do not think that any question remain unanswered, and all the participants are also sending the thank you for this organizing the session, and the also the Shailesh sir for coming on this platform on for that very short notice. Sir given the consent, and sir come forward to that we should have this webinar, and sir given the consent, and we are organized with the help of that. So the basically that we are going to finish this our webinar, and thank you all the participants for coming this, and I'm also personally thanks to the Shailesh sir on behalf of the Campus Law Center University of Delhi for coming here on this webinar and enlighten us for during this ongoing crisis, and also answered our certain queries with regard to their right to information, as since he is the person who have the practical experience, and he's also the alumni of the IIT also. And so he was the first person who non-bureaucrat who become that CIC in that. So I think that this is beautiful that things we happen, and our nation is lucky that Central Information Commission is lucky that have the personality like the Shailesh sir in that institution who maintain the who works for the what object of the RTI is that. So I'm personally thank you, and on behalf of the Campus Law Center also, Shailesh Gandhi sir, we are thankful to you for attending, coming on this session.
Mr. Sebastian, and thanks to all the participants. Thank you very much.
Okay, so Sunny Sebastian sir is also joined us, and I'm also thankful to the Sunny Sebastian sir for coming on this forward and also enlighten us the what is the role of the media and all these things in this RTI. So now we are going to finish this, and also I'm also thankful to our professor in charge, Professor Raman Mittal sir, for taking this kind of the initiative for the students as well as for the public also. This is the webinar is open for all citizens, all the from the nations of Shailesh sir joined from Maharashtra. Sir joined from Rajasthan, Jaipur. So this is the platform which I'm providing. I'm also thankful to all my colleagues of the Campus Law Center, and also special thankful for my technical assistance, which is given by the Dr. Chidit Singh and Dr. Narendra Nagarwal. So I'm also thankful to all the beautiful participants for coming forward and asking the beautiful questions. So thank you. See you soon. I'm also looking forward that I will see you in another webinar